Okay, so last video I talked about how I went to see my GP and she referred me to this thing called CAMHS, which, if you've forgotten, stands for Child Adolescent Mental Health Service, and it is funded by the NHS. Now, I'm not saying that CAMHS doesn't work at all, I'm just saying that it didn't work for me, but different things work for different people. Anyway, so it took CAMHS about a month to make an appointment with me, which was a sign of what was to come. And in that month I had been eating fairly normally, so I was surprised when they actually decided to treat me for an eating disorder. I remember them saying that they had caught it in its early stages, and so they thought it'd be easier to treat. I just decided to go along with it because it pleased my parents, and I admit there's always a part of me that wants to recover. But I remember that I was only expecting to be given a therapist, like I said in my last video. But they actually gave me a dietitian, a psychotherapist, and a random woman who did the family sessions along with my therapist. So I would have not quite regular appointments with all of these people separately. So in a normal month, I would have, say, one appointment with my dietitian, and I would have to write a food diary of the previous week of what I'd eaten. And then my dietitian would weigh me and occasionally check my height sometimes. And when I was particularly bad, she'd give me a meal plan when I hadn't eaten very much. But most of the time, she would just tell me to eat more or eat the same, or even eat less, but not really. Anyway, and my appointments with my dietitian became the only time I'd find out about my weight, because my parents hid and have still hidden the scales at their advice from someone at CAMHS. Anyway, so I'd normally have one or two appointments with my psychotherapist in a month as well, who would always ask me something like how I act at school, and then she would tell me her theory on why I acted a certain way or why I did a certain thing. And then, which always threw me, she would ask what I thought about what she just said, which throws me and confuses me because I never know what to say, because it's just like, well, I just do act that way, and if you say so, then okay, but I never really had any feelings on what she said because it all sounded like psychobabble to me. But anyways, and then after about 3 months, I would have a family session, which would normally only be me and my mother, because CAMHS. Oh, and also I would only see my dietitian about every 3 months as well. Or maybe I see her every month, I don't know, but not very often. I see my psychotherapist more often, but yeah. I would have, and every 3 months I would have a family session, which would normally only be me and my mother, because my two sisters weren't required to attend because they're too young, and yeah, and CAMHS would always beg for my father to attend, but he was always too busy at work, and yeah, the family session would normally involve my psychotherapist and dietitian. Well, my dietitian would tell them beforehand. My dietitian never was actually at the family meeting. She'd always just tell someone, like the random woman or my psychotherapist, what had been going on. But yeah, but basically it'd be about them feeding back on what I told them. Where was I? Feeding back to my mother what I had said to them. So say if I said to them, oh, I haven't been doing too bad today, and my meal plan had looked quite alright and I hadn't lost any weight, then they'd normally just be like, oh yeah, she's fine, and then the random woman would normally ask my mother what she thought I'd been getting up to and whether she thought I'd been good or bad over the past couple of months. So that's like family therapy, and then they'd often ask me, and it would just be like sitting around, just like it would basically be a big feedback session, like how was she doing, kind of thing. But yeah, so I've been treated by CAMHS for about 8 months now. The same thing, like yeah, and I honestly can say that since I started treatment in February, when I started treatment in February, before that I'd been at my lowest weight and my lowest, or I should say lowest BMI, because my height has changed since then. My lowest BMI, and then I got back up, and I'm close to my lowest BMI now, but basically throughout the whole time being treated by CAMHS, I stayed at a healthy weight, but it never really helped. But that wasn't really anything to do with CAMHS. Like, I was still torturing myself every day over what I ate, and I was still going through cycles of starving myself and binging, and CAMHS never really properly, like, they did everything so slowly that it was almost like they could only be half bothered to treat me, because they never really made that regular appointments. They were always all over the place, and there'd often be gaps in between, and they never really actually accessed the problem. It's like I sort of probably need like a big shake and a wake up call, but CAMHS never did that. They just sort of were like every week, just how are you feeling, and it's just kind of like, I'm feeling this way, and then they'd just be like, okay, next appointment we'll tell your mum that you're feeling this way, and then my mum would be like, oh my god, you're not eating, I'm gonna make you eat more, and then I'll just be more upset. But yeah, so anyway, so this video is basically about CAMHS. Yeah, so I was seeing CAMHS for quite a few months, and in those months I was going up and down a lot. Like, yeah, like I was like going through stages of binging, stages of starving, stages of eating normally, and I was torturing myself quite a lot inside, but I didn't really have much to show for on the outside. Like, yeah, like there was an awful lot of bad thoughts going on in my head, but nothing much changed about my body, because I had such an uneven pattern. Like, my weight was fluctuating so much that it barely showed. So that was from like February. I'm gonna say that was from like February until like June. Yeah, February until like June this year. I'm gonna talk about what happened around about June, like June, July, August, September, October. Okay, up until April. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about what happened April next video. So yes, that's this video. CAMHS, basically. Bye bye.